Hello and welcome to another crash course on full stack programming. In this video, I will create a basic car rental listing application in Laravel using test-driven development. Test-driven development, or which is more commonly known as TDD, is great because it guides your development and helps you deliver cleaner and more reliable code. By the end of this course, you will have a good understanding of TDD and you'll be able to apply it in your own projects with confidence. So let's dive in. Let's create our new project using the Laravel CLI. So we'll use Laravel new car rentals. We're going to use the Laravel Breeze starter kit, Blade with Alpine, yes for dark mode support, and we're going to be using PHP Unit as our testing framework. So for database, we will be using MySQL, and we're not going to run the migrations for now. All right, so our project is now created. So let's cd into our project folder and open it up in the text editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to bring that workspace here. All right, so let's first set up our database, and in order to do that, we will go to our env file, and it sets the connection correctly, and all I need to do is provide the password. So to do that, I will provide my password here, and the next thing I want to do is create the database. So to do that, I'm going to go to my terminal, and I'm going to use the MySQL shell, enter the password, and let's create the database using the create database command. And let me just make sure the name is correct. Car rentals. Okay, so we'll do car rentals, and that's all we need to do here, and our database should be created. And I'm going to go over here. So this is the database client that I use to interact with my database. So I'm going to create a new connection here for MySQL. You can use MySQL Workbench or SQL Yoke, whichever one you prefer. So the database will use the name car rentals, and put the password here as well, and let me just test the connection. Okay, so it's good. So let's, so the name is fine, and let's finish. So this creates the car rentals connection here, and it should be empty right now. So now we are going to migrate our database. So let's do PHP artisan migrate, and it should create these three tables. So if we go into our database, actually let's do show tables, and we see a lot of other tables, and I guess we're good to go. So these are the cache tables, the jobs table, and the users table. Okay, so let's open up the project in our browser, and let's create a new account. All right, now that we have logged in, that means that our connection is good, and the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to install the front-end dependencies. Okay, so before we do that, I need to do npm install, and after that, now we can run npm run dev. So now we're all good, and let's get going. Okay, so I'm going to open up a new tab here, and here I'm going to run my tests for the first time to see, and So looks like we have 25 tests that Laravel comes with, and they're all passing. But before we move any further, I'm going to go into our php unit.xml file, and I'm going to uncomment these two values to use a SQLite connection for, let me just bring this over here. Yeah, so just going to use an in-memory SQLite database connection, and it's not going to affect our the actual connection that we have, that we defined here, so that when we run the migrations, it's not going to drop and recreate our database every time. So now if we run it again, yep, it works. So instead of having to run PHP unit, it's more convenient to define an alias for this command. So that's what I'm going to do inside of I'm using the Z shell. So for me, the RC file is going to be the ZSHRC. So if you go in there, I'm going to allow it to open it. And so these are the aliases that I have defined. So these two are the ones that you need to define. So let me just remove these and define so that you can follow along. So you say alias, and so this is what we're going to run, and what we put after the equal is what is going to actually be executed. So we'll say when there bin php unit. So this is basically going to run all tests, and then we'll do an alias for ttf, which is going to run a subset of the tests. So we'll do vendor bin php unit, and we'll do filter and an argument here. So that's where we're going to provide the name of the test that we want to run. So so I have already loaded the RC files, but I'm going to do that here again. So you need to run source, and after that you should be able to use the aliases that you defined. So I'm going to do TT, and it's going to run all tests. And if I'm going to do TTF and just do example test that comes with Laravel, you can see that it only ran 2 tests, and which made 2 assertions. So just to show you, so this is the example test that Laravel comes with, and these are the profile tests that we saw that ran earlier when we ran the whole suite. Great. So let's start the seeding of our application. So so since this is a car rental application, so it would require some seed data, like the car makers and the models that are there. So when a user is creating a listing, they should see a the drop downs for the makers and the models instead of having to type them in, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and do it. So I'm going to create a model for maker, and we're going to create a migration and a factory for it. So and then I'm going to go into that maker's migration, and all we need here is a table string column with the title. Yep. And inside of our factories, so if we go into maker factory, so I'm going to use a title, this faker, and let's say company. Right. So basically what we use factories is for when we are running tests, we need to generate some random fake data, and factories are perfect for that. Instead of having to manually create a certain number of records in the database, you can just call a factory, and you can either provide no arguments, or you can override some of these values as needed. So it will make sense when we actually go about using them. And since we have done that, let's run php artisan migrate to migrate our database, and we should have our makers table. And yeah. All right, so let's create our second model, which is I'm going to call it car model, and generate a migration and a factory for it. The reason I'm not calling it model, because there is already like a model class in Laravel, and to avoid the confusion, so I'm going to use call it car model. So let's go to the migration. So here we're going to do foreign ID, and we're going to have a maker ID column. Say it's constrained on the maker's ID, and let's add an on delete cascade. And the second column that we're going to have is for title, and I'm going to have another column here. I'm going to make it an enum for the shape. This is going to be like if you have a what is the shape of the car, or the model that we have, like is it a sedan or an SUV, etc. So instead of putting these values here, I'm going to create an enum. So let's go into our app and a new folder called enums, and here I'm going to call it car shape.php, and let's give it a namespace of app enums, and we'll call it enum car shape, and we'll have string values. So we will define I guess 4, so sedan equals sedan, right? And let's paste that a couple times. So we'll have a hatchback, hatchback, and then we have an SUV, and an other. So we can add more, but it's not about this. So we'll just do public static function values. I'm just going to return an array, and here what we will do is we will return array map, and we will just going to have a function, and what we're going to pass is the static cases, right? So it's going to give us each case, and here inside of the function we're going to get a car shape type, so we can just say self and then the case, and we can just say case value, and now we can use this inside of here. Let's say car shape values, and let's import that, and just make sure the other stuff is okay. And now let's go to our car model factory, and here what we will do is we're going to say maker ID, and here we can just pass an instance of the maker factory, so it's going to generate a new maker if you don't pass a maker ID through. And then we have a title, we can just say this faker name, it can be anything. And then for the shape we will use the faker random element, and for the array we're going to again pass the car shape values, and let me just import that in, and we should be good. And if we now go and run php artisan migrate, all right, oh, so we misspelled something here, it's foreign ID. Okay, so let's run php artisan migrate, and the models table should be created. So if we do show tables again, yeah, we have these makers and we have these car models. Nice. Now let's create our first seeder. So let's say PHP artisan make seeder and maker seeder. And let's go into our seeders. And here, what we're going to do is we're going to seed our database with some values. So I'm going to provide a few here. Let's say Toyota, Honda, Suzuki, and Nissan, Mitsubishi, and Daihatsu. So I guess these are enough, and then we'll do for each makers as maker, and we'll just say maker create, and we'll pass actually like this, and we'll say title, and we'll say maker. Yeah, so it should create these makers. And now let's create our model seeder. Which is going to be slightly more complicated than this. So we'll do PHP artisan make seeder model car model seeder, and here we are going to just do the same thing. So we're going to define the data here, or let's say, and I'm going to bring these makes here and provide a few models for each. So for Toyota, let's say that we're going to have an array, so that we also provide a shape. So let's say Corolla, and for the shape, let's say car shape sedan. And yeah, so let me just quickly import this. And so we have Corolla, we have Yaris, and there will be a hatchback, and then we have a Prius. There's also a sedan. Okay, and let's create the same thing. Honda, we have City, Fit, and then we have Civic. And then let's put some models for Suzuki. Okay, so let's paste that in. And for Suzuki, we have Swift. Let's say it doesn't really matter, but let's add another one. Alto is also hatchback. Okay, so we have Nissan, and for that we have Mira. Okay, so let's copy that. And Nissan Almera, and the other one will be March. Species, space those two. We have a Lancer, and this is a sedan, and Mirage, and then let's add two for the Hatsu. So space them in, say Arla, hatchback, and then Sigra with this hatchback as well. Okay, so now that we have the data, we simply need to create this. So let's say data as a maker, and then the models inside. We would say maker equals maker where title is maker, and find the first one, and let's import that. And then we'll say for each models as model, then we can just do car model create, nope, it's a car model create. Do we have this? Yeah, okay. And inside, let's say maker ID, so that'll be maker ID. For the title, we will use the model 0, and for the shape, we'll do model 1. Yep, and I think we're good to go here. So actually, I want to move this to a private method. so that we see the implementation here rather than the, so let's say this data, or rather just do this data here instead of doing this. And let's create a private function data, should return an array, and let's just return this from here. Yep. So now you see what is being done here instead of this data here. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is running these seeders, so which is just a going into the database seeder. This is the seeder that is run every time you run the db seed command. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to say this call, and I'm going to pass in an array of the seeders that we just created. So the first is going to be the maker seeder, and the second is going to be the car model seeder. And yep, now if we go here and we do db seed, and we go to our database and we select from makers, yeah, we see those here, and then we do models, sorry, car models, yeah, and we see all those, and they are correctly associated with the maker. So that's good. And now the good thing about this is that now if you ever need to migrate your database, let's say we do migrate fresh, so all you have to do is pass in the seed flag, and it's going to reseed your database, so it doesn't lose the data, so you don't have to like manually recreate this. So you'll always have those drop downs filled even if you clean out your database. So now let's write our first test for creating a listing. So I'm going to generate a new test. So I'll say PHP artisan make test create listing feature test. Right, so it should generate a test, and it should put it inside of our test feature directory. And here I'm going to remove this test that is right here, and the first test that I'm going to write is going to be that a not logged in user, a guest user, should not be able to access the create listing page, right? So let's go. So I'm gonna say public function, and a test is just a function that you just add a prefix for test underscore, at least for PHP unit. So you say test underscore, and then you specify the what the test is. So we say a non-logged in user should not be able to access the create listing form. Right? So you can be as descriptive as you want here, so that when you run the test, for the entire test suite, you should be able to see like what is going on. And it's all, if you write the name of the test in a descriptive way, it also creates a documentation for your application, so you could just run the test and you could see like what features are there. Anyway, so be descriptive, that's it. So we're going to create a test for route listings dot create. So if you go there, it should redirect us to the login page. Now let's go and run the test. So we'll use TTF, the alias that we created initially. And the first error that we get is listings.create route does not exist. So let's go to our web.php file, and we'll do listings/create, and we'll say listings controller class and create. We'll give it a name, listings.create. All right, so Let's run the test again and see what we hit next. So it says that the listings controller does not exist. Yeah, which is kind of obvious. The editor told us that, but it's nice to get your test to tell you what's missing. So we'll create the controller, listings controller, and let's import that in here. And now let's run the test again. Nope, let's run the test. Okay, so it tells us that the create method is not defined on the listings controller. You can just do create, and let's go and run the test again. Yeah, so it says that we expect a redirect, but we're receiving a 200 because, and that is to be expected because when you don't return anything, it means that an empty response, but a successful response. So all we need to do is move this route into this auth group. So now if we run the test, it goes to green. Okay, so it passes because now if you try to do listings create, let's go here and do listings create, it redirects us to login. So we just built our first test and we got it to pass. Nice. All right, so let's keep going. So the next test that I'm going to create is going to be that a test underscore a logged in user should be able to see the necessary fields to create a listing. All right. So how do we log a user in when we are running tests? So what you need to do is, we're first going to create a user using the user factory, and the way you do that is, on your model, call the factory method, and then on that factory, you call the create method. So it's going to create a random user. And if you want to take a look at how this works, it's a user factory, just like we created for the make random model, and it has these the definition. It creates a fake name, an email, and the email verify that the password is password, and this. So it's going to give us a user right here. So all we have to do is just do this, right? And then we can call the acting as method, and you pass in a user object here. So this is going to log us in, and after that, now that means that we are logged in, right? So we're going to do the same thing that we did over here. Let's say this get route, and let's say listings.create. All right, and so the first thing that should be like assert okay. Okay, so or you can just say assert status 200, or you could just do assert okay. Means that it's a successful response. And the next thing that we want to do is that we want to make sure that we see all the necessary fields and the text on the page. So let's make those assertions. So I'm going to say response assert C. Okay, and you can pass in an array of the things that you want to be able to see. So the first thing is that I want to see a create listing title. I should see a field for the title, the maker, the model, and the year, and the registration number. Then for the transmission of the car, then a price per day, a phone number, and then images, and then we're going to have a button for select images. Yeah, so I guess these are the things that we should be able to see, and we also want to make assertions. Assert C HTML, right? So these are the assertions that we're going to make about the fields, to make sure that the fields are present. So I'm gonna make it name equals title, and we're going to have a name equals maker ID, and say name equals model ID, and then we're going to have a name year. Let's do a one for registration number, and the name equals transmission, then another one for price per day, then for phone number, and one for images, so images and this. All right, and one last assertion, assert C HTML, will be to show the form, so that we should have a form there. So that will be action equals right, so say route listings.store. Okay, so we should have an action attribute, then we should have a method of post, and then inc type should be there for the multi-part / form - data. All right, so these are the assertions that we can make about this. So now let's run this test. Okay, so we have a long way to go to get this to pass. So the first error that we get is that there is no such table as users, and yeah, so we get this because we did not, tell our test to run the migrations. So in order to do that, we can just do refresh databases, include that trait. So now every test that runs, it will, drop our database and recreate it, run the migrations essentially. And yeah, so we have the first error that, the response does not contain the create listing title. All right, so let's go to our listings controller and return a view, which will be listings.create. And let's go to our resources and views, and I'm going to create a new folder called listings, and I create a new template. And here what we're going to do is we'll say x app layout, and let's copy some things from these profile edit. So let's copy this and actually paste the whole thing. So we'll say create listing, and we don't want all these forms. We just want yeah, we just want this, and let's get rid of all of this. Okay, so now the styling is not something that we can test, so we will have to make sure that functionality is solid, and then we can style up everything, and we can style the things the way we want. So so we added the create listing. So now let's run the test again. Let's see. So it says that it can't find the title. Yeah, so let's create our form here, right? Actually, let's create the form here, and let's not put anything here. We'll let our test tell us what to do. So we'll create a div here, and I'm going to add a comment for title and a title, so that we know like this is the wrapper for the title. So here I'm going to say create a label with the the Breeze starter kit that we used. So we have this component input label, and we'll say label for name, and or actually not for the name, we can say title, right? And let's use title, and let's create the input. Let's say x text input, ID equals name to match the for attribute of the label, and then we'll do name equals title. Actually, no, it's supposed to be title. I don't know why I keep saying name. And then we'll add a class here of mt2 and w-full, and then just add the error, x input error, and we'll add the class of mt2 and then the messages. So we'll say errors get title, and we should be good. So now let's see what the next error that we get is about the maker. All right, so let's add a new div here, and actually let's not add these for now. All right, I guess that one is fine, but I'm just going to stick to what the tests are complaining about. So I'm going to say maker, right? Input label. Let's run the next. Now we don't have a model, so maker and maker. So let's open this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to register a new user to add the stylings as we go along, because with the test you can't really see what's going on in the view. So it'll be nice to add those things as we're doing it. Okay, so if you go to listings, create, yeah, so I guess we should add a margin to start with here, 24, yeah, so that's kind of better. And let's copy this, and here, just make it model, going. The next one is for year. Okay, so let's just do year, year. All right, and let's run the test one more time. So it's going to be the registration number. All right, let's copy this and repeat registration number, and here we can just say registration number. Okay, then we have transmission. Again, let's repeat transmission, and the next failure is the price per day. So let's copy that, and actually it's not supposed to be transmission ID, just transmission should be fine. Okay, so actually let me just quickly check. Yeah, so it's been incorrect for all of this. Okay, so you got transmission, and this one is going to be for the price per day. Let's say price per day. All right, run the test again. Phone number. All right, let's add the phone number here. So we do phone number and phone phone number. Okay, so yeah, so for images, let's put that into another column here. So I want images to be, the image field to be over here. So what I'm going to do is here I'm going to add a I guess a grid, and a grid equals 2. And so this is going to be the left column, and the right column, right, and we'll do a div max width XL. And let's go over here and let's do the same thing. So the error was about the images, right? So we're going to add a div, and yeah, so let's X input label. So we'll do, I don't know, X input label, and we'll say for images, and images X input label. Yep. And yeah, select images. So let's add a X secondary button, and we'll add a type on it so that it doesn't submit the form when it's clicked, and we'll say select images. So what I want to do is, you know, the file input that we're going to have, I'm going to hide that, and I'm going to trigger a click on it when this button is clicked. So I guess we should be able to get to the next. Yeah, so now we are at the, you know, field validations. So let's go. And for the maker, we're going to have a drop down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, actually, let me just close others, and just open up the test, create listing feature test. And yeah, so inside of our components, we have text input. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to say select input .blade.php. All right, so let's make this a select and select, and here we're going to output what the slot. So inside of this, what we can do now is we can say X select input, and then we'll have a name equals maker ID, and let's add the ID as well, maker ID, and I guess we have a W full and empty 2, and yeah. So for options, we'll use the, you know, the makers from a database. So let's go to our listings controller. Actually, let's also drive that by, you know, using our tests. So, but for now, let's just run the test. Now we are guys complaining about the models. Okay, so let's do that. So it should be model ID, and so now switch here. Let's see how it's looking. Yeah, so it's looking kind of okay. And for the year, I will just do, and actually let's do X input error, and we'll add a class of empty2 messages equals errors get maker ID. Yep. And let's copy this and paste it in here. I'll do model ID, and let's do a X text input. We'll do ID equals here, name equals here, and class empty2 W full, and then we'll just copy this All right, for the registration number, let's do the same thing. Okay, so this will be that, and yeah. Actually, for the year, I want to use a select. So let's say x select input, name equals year, and ID equals year as well. Yep. And let's add those classes. W full empty2. And let's do a for, and we'll say I equals 2024. I is greater than 19, like maybe 1980, and I minus minus. Let's do and for, and add the options here. Okay, so we'll say value will be I, and this will also be I. Okay, so let's take a look. Yep. Yeah, so let's make it equal to. And the next thing that we want to do is we've got the registration number, we've got transmission, and for that, let's also use a select. So let's put that here, and we want to use name transmission, and we only have two options. To have an option for value equals automatic, and automatic option value equals manual, and manual. Okay. So I guess that's also okay. We got price per day. Let's run the test, see where we are. Yeah, so we have a price per day field that's missing. So let's say X input. Actually, let's copy this. So we'll do price per day, and the next one is going to be for phone number. Let's do the same here. Price per day with a phone number, and let's run that. So we got an images. So we'll do an input type equals file, and name will be images, and I guess we'll also add an ID, images, and we'll add a class of hidden on it so that it doesn't show. And yeah, so now we say that listings.store is not defined. So let's go to our web.php, to route post listings, and have a listings controller class store, and we'll do listings.store. All right, so now we defined it. What's next? So it says that method post, it does not contain that, right? So that's what we expected when we did that. So let's go to our form and let's add that. So let's say for our actions, we'll do route listings.store, we'll do a method of post, and we'll say inc type equals multi-part form data. Let's add our CSRF over here. All right. So we got the test to pass, and if we come over here, we're all good. We have a form, and yeah. All right, So what we're going to do next is make some more assertions about this view. I want to make sure that the makers and the models are loaded. So in order to do that, what I will do is I will add some more assertions here. So what I'll do is response, and we'll say assert HTML, assert C HTML. And here, what I want to do is I want to make sure that the options are there. So I'll say option value, and the value should be of the maker option. So let's bring the makers. So let's take all of the makers, and let's make sure that there are so let's say that that there are some makers available. So let's do this assert not empty, and let's pass those through. Okay, and what we will do now is we'll do for each makers as maker, and for all of them we want to see an option. So let's do this, and we'll say maker ID and yeah, we want to see, and I'm not going to close this out because we maybe want to add some more attributes. So yeah, so I don't want, so I want it to be as less flaky as possible. So let's do this and see what we get. So let's run this test. So it should fail, but it's failing line 49, asserting that an object is not empty. Okay, so it's failing right here because there are no makers, even though we have configured the seeders for this. So I'm going to do now is that I'm going to say makers are not available. Yes, so because if there are no makers, like if you didn't add that, and if you run it, it will pass because there are no makers, and because this is empty, this is not going to run. And so we need a sort of like a checkpoint here to make sure that what we're about to do next is going to make sense, right? So in order to seed our database in the test, all we have to do is just do this seed, and now if we do, so now we're getting the error, we're passing that test. And the reason I added this is because it gives us a descriptive message about the failure instead of like an object that's empty. Yeah, so whatever that message was, so this is going to tell us more. So like if I comment this out and run it again, so it tells us that markers are not available. So yeah, it tells me like there's something wrong with the seeding. And one more thing, I'm not going to do this here because we have a place which we should do this kind of a setup, and well, it's called setup, and you can just do parent setup, and then you can just do this seed. Yes, and now it should work. Let's make sure that we're filling at the correct point now. Yeah, and now we can go inside of the makers select, and we'll just add a for each for makers as maker and for each. And let's do an option with a value, and we'll just do maker ID, and then just do maker title, and let's close the tag. So now if you run, yeah, so undefined variable makers. So I think, yes, we need to pass the makers through. So we'll do makers, and we'll do maker all. And now if you run it, yep, we pass. Now, what I want to do about models is that it's a bit different because, I want it to be so that when we make a change to the maker, we should be able to, see the models that are under that maker. Yeah, if that makes sense. So I'm going to use Alpine to implement that functionality. But inside of the test, just to make sure that we have that, I'm going to add an assertion. So I'm going to say response assert C HTML, and I'm going to say all the models, model all, and then to JSON. Yep. So if I see this JSON, then that's good enough for me that we are doing it. So if I run it, so now it's going to say, yeah, so it's not just model, it's car model. And let's import that. It's already imported. Let's get rid of this model to avoid any confusion. Let's run. Okay, so these are not there. So the first things first, we need to pass these through. So we'll say car model all, and yeah, so we have passed these through, and now we're going to use Alpine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say X data, and we'll say listing form, and down here I'm going to create a script tag to implement that function. So I'm going to say function listing form, and we're going to return an object from this. Actually an object, not an array. And so it's going to have a property for maker, the selected maker, which is by default going to be the makers first, and then we're just going to take the ID, and other than that we'll have a models, and we're going to put them in a JSON. So we're going to take models because we're going to serialize the models and assign it to this. So if we run the test, yeah, so we're getting all the data. Now it's just a matter of hooking it up, which we're going to do with Alpine. So where are we? Yeah, so here I'm going to create a template tag. You're going to use x4 and model in models. Give it a key of model.id, and let's close the template tag. And inside we're going to use an option with the we're going to bind its value to the model ID, and here we're going to add x text, the model.title, and let's just close the tag. Right, so now if we go over here, I'm going to log in. Close that. So I'm going to say john@example.com, enter the password, and here now we have all the models. But now what we want to do is that we want to select this, and I want this list to be filtered. So in order to do that, we can do models.filter, and we're going to take that, and we're going to just say m.maker ID is equals to maker underscore ID. This maker ID is going to be, of course, the one here. And one last thing that we need to do is that we need to bind the maker select. Yeah, we're going to say x model, and then we'll say maker ID. So now if we go here, we should only see the Toyota models, and if we select Suzuki, we see the Suzuki ones, and yeah, so now it's working correctly. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to style this a bit better. Yeah, it'll be considerably better, because yeah, this could be improved a whole lot. So let's add an MT2 to make it consistent with this. And the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to add some gap to my grid. So I'm going to say gap 4. Right. So, and one last thing that I want to do is add a button. side of the form. So I'm going to say div.empty4 x primary button, and we'll use the trans helper to say create listing. Yep, and I guess this is it. Yeah, we got the button, and we're good. So let's just run our entire suite to make sure that all the tests are passing, and we're good. So one last thing that I want to do here is I want to hook this up so that when we click select images, we should get the file selector. So so the one thing that I want to do is we want to make this multiple so that we can select multiple images. And yeah, so we're going to use Alpine here as well. So I'm going to say X, actually not here, but here. So we're going to say X data. So let's create a new component to make keep it simple. So I'm going to call it image preview, and let's define it over here. I'm going to say function image preview, and it's going to return an object. Okay, so here we're going to let's bring this attributes down on its to its own line to make it more readable. And now I'm going to give it a ref for the file input, and when this button is clicked, so let's bring this, give ourselves some more room. So what I want to do is when the button is clicked, I want to trigger the click event on this ref. So in order to do that, we can just use refs dot file input dot click, and let's see if this works. Yes, it does. And yeah, so when this actually changes, I want to call a function on my component called handle files, and I'm going to pass through the event object. And yeah, so we're going to have a previews array to contain the images that were selected, and then we're going to create the function handle files, and it's going to have event. All right, so let's do const files equals event dot target dot files, and we'll do for let I equals 0, I is less than files dot length I plus plus. Okay, and here we're going to create a new file reader, and we'll do reader dot own load equals, and we're going to push into the previews array the e.target.result, and then we're going to just say reader.read as data URL files of I. Okay, so this should give us the previews, and we can actually put those outside of here. So let's create a div and add the image here, and we can actually do a template X for img, actually no, preview, and index in previews, and the key will be the index, and template, and then we're going to bind the source with the preview, and let's keep alt as image. Okay, so let's try it out. I'm going to select an image. It doesn't work. Let's see if we have any errors. Read as data URL. Yeah, I think I misspelled it. It's supposed to be all caps. So let's try it again. Yep, we get the image of the car, and if we select multiple, we get those as well. Okay, so let's do some styling for these images. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say MT4 and make it flex and give it a gap of 4. And then inside for each image, I will add the class width 24, h 24, and object cover so they don't get stretched, grounded algae, and shadow sm. So if you go and try it again, so if you select 2 images, yep, they show up like this. Right, so I think the width and height are not being applied. So let me see if yeah, it is running, so it should work. Yes, so the problem was that, I think this was not actually refreshing the classes, so I just stopped the dev and then just restarted it, and then it just started working. So let's give ourselves some more width. So I'm gonna make it maybe 32 and try it again. Select 3 now. Yeah, so this looks much better. Yeah, I think this is good enough. We get the preview and then we can just work with them. All right. All right, so now let's create the test. So I'm going to say, actually, we're not going to create a new feature test, but we are going to add some more tests to this. So this test is going to be about actually saving the listing. So let's say test a not logged in user must not be able to save a listing, right? And what we'll do is we'll do response equals this post and route listings.store, and let's say response assert redirect to /login. Okay, I think this should pass because I think we already added that route here to pass the failure that was that this route was undefined in the form. So we already added it to the correct place, but just to see it fail, if we put it out of there, so it will fail, right? So because it's going to look for that, but if we put it here, it's not going to even get to that. It's just going to pass, right? And now we're going to continue. So I'm going to add the next text, which is going to be, kind of a, kind of a big test to say that a logged in user should or say can successfully create a listing. All right, so so in order to create a listing, we need some data. So for the listing, we will have a title. So let's say luxury car available for rent, and then we have the maker that was selected, inside the form, and let's say that let's say you set it to 1, the model, let's set that to 1 as well, and for the year let's go with 2016, and then we have the registration number of the car. Let's set this to ABC123, and the transmission, so let's do automatic, and price per day, and let's say 100, and the phone number 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and the images. Okay, so we're going to use the fake uploaded files. So to do that, we'll do uploaded file, and we'll do fake, and then we're going to say that we want the image. So let's say that car1.jpg, and let's leave the width and height out. Uploaded file, fake, we're going to add 2 images, right? So we're going to say car2.jpg. Oh, not the semicolons. So yeah, so we have the data now. Now we're going to send this data to our create listing route. So let's create a user, because we can't do this without a user. So we can say user factory create, and we'll say this acting as, yeah, this should be familiar now, user, and then we'll do response equals this post route listings dot store, and the data that we need to pass through, and we want to make sure that it should redirect, assert redirect to the route of listings dot index. So it should go to the home page where all the listings are once the listing is created, and then we're going to fetch the listing. So let's say listing where user ID is user ID, and let's make sure that we also add a filter for the title. So we'll do data title, and let's do first. So that means that a listing should be created in the database. So let's say this assert not null listing. Okay, so this should not be null. There should be a listing in the database, and then we'll do this assert equals, and now we're going to check each and every column. So we're going to say data title and listing title, and all right, so we have maker ID, model ID, model ID. We don't essentially need the maker ID in here because we have the model, but like you know, it could be useful like if you wanted to see like how many Suzuki listings you have, and you know, you won't need to, you know, create a join. You could just get it from this table. So yeah, so then we'll do for year, and we have the registration number, and then we have the transmission, and the price per day, and the phone number. All right, so after that we want to make sure that the image that we sent is uploaded and is correctly associated with the listing. So to do that, we need to create a use the storage facade, and we need to use the fake so that it doesn't actually store the images. And So we'll say storage disk, and we're going to be storing the images in the public disk, and we'll say assert exists, and we'll say images. So inside the public disk, we'll create an images folder, and inside we'll do make sure that the first image exists, and then we'll do the same thing for the second image. So yeah, I'm not sure why this is creating like an error, but this should be fine. Yeah, please ignore that. And we can just do this assert count. Yeah, so we'll do count data images. So the the number of images that were sent should be equal to the images in the listing, and then we should make sure that the images that were uploaded are the ones that are associated with the listing. So let's do listing images each, and we're going to use a function, and here we're also going to need the data. Here we will say this assert contains image path. So the image path should be in this list. So, and we're going to pass both of those images. So we'll say images slash data, and then images 0, and then hash name. And so this is going to check that these two images are actually these two images, the ones that we sent and the ones that then are uploaded. All right, so this is a kind of a big test, and let's run it and see where we land. All right, so it says that the listings index is not defined, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're just going to create a route for that. So let's do route get listings, and do listings controller, listings controller class index, and then the name will be listings.index. And let's try next. So this time it failed at invalid route action listings controller. Yeah, so we need to put this into an array. Yeah, so we're getting the store method does not exist. Yeah, we can do that. Public function store. And let's see what's next. So it expects the redirect. Well, we can redirect it, no problem. We'll do return redirect, and then the route will be listings.index, and yeah, all good. Oh, but the listing model is not found, so we can actually do this, make model listing, and I guess I would create a migration in a factory for it. But let's just create the model because we got the error for the model, right? So yeah, we need to import that into the test. Okay, so let's do import class. Got it. And let's run the test. Okay, there's no such table as listings, right? So now we're going to create the migration. Make migration create listings table, and we should be good. So let's go to create listings table. Yeah, I guess it's the name of the table from the command. And all right, so let's start by creating a column for the title, and then we'll do table foreign ID, and we'll do a user ID, and it will be constrained, yes. And then we have a couple more for the maker and the model. model ID. Okay, then we are going to create a column for the year, and then the string with the registration number, other string with the transmission, and other one with the double price per day, and then another one for the phone number. And on the down, it should just drop the data, drop the table. So let's just go. Nope, we created the migration. That's not what we want. So I'm going to delete that because it will lead to errors. All right, so now let's run the test again. Oh, failed asserting that null is not null. Okay. So this is very confusing. So I would like to add like a message, a failure message for this as well. So when we go here, so since the listing is not good because we did not create a listing, so this is to be expected. So I'm going to say that listing was not created. And now if we run, yeah, listing was not created. So this is good. Now let's go to our listings controller and let's get the request. And what we want to do is create the listing, and we want to create it for the user, right? So we'll do request user listings and create, and then we'll say request input, and we're going to pass in the request, and that is going to create a listing for the user, right? Because we want to create the listing for the currently logged in user. And it's a call to undefined method user listings. Okay, so side of the user model, we'll define a relationship for the listings. So public function listings, and we'll do has many, and let's import that. So say return this has many listing class, and it should figure out the rest of the foreign keys on its own. So add title to fillable property to allow mass assignment. And so for this, I'm going to go into listing. Instead of specifying each and every one of the fields, I'm going to just set guarded to empty, so that because it doesn't have any kind of a sensitive information. So let's just run it. So it's a general table listings has no column named images. Yeah, so it's trying to assign images as well. So we can just do request accept images. Yeah, and let's run it again. General error, no such table, main.models, insert into listings, title. Yeah. So this is kind of strange. No such table, main.models. Yep. So inside of our migration create listings table, we said maker ID, model ID, and we constrained it. But this is going to expect that the table name to be models, right? But we want it to be table name. So if we hover over this, yeah. So the table name is car models. And now let's run this. Yeah, so unable to find a file or directory at the path. So it's not able to find the file, then that's to be expected because we haven't created the file yet. So let's go here and let's do for each request images as image, and we'll do path equals image store, and we'll store it in images and public. Okay, so this is the disk, the public disk, and inside of the images folder it's going to give us the path. So we're going to say listing images and create the path and the path. Okay, so we're going to create this images relationship, which doesn't exist right now, but yeah, so let's run the test and let the test tell us. So we don't have anything called images. Okay, so if you go here, let's define it. Public function images has many, return this has many image class. All right, so image not found, let's create that. Make model image, let's do that, and let's import this as well. Okay, let's run the test. Path, okay, so we'll set the guarded to empty here as well, protected, guarded, and now let's run this again. No such table. Let's create the migration. Make migration create images table, and do create images table. And all right, so let's create it for the foreign ID of listing, and then we'll do table string path. And now let's run the test again, and it passes. So let's close these migration files and go back to our test. So if we now run the test, and let's run the whole suite to make sure that nothing else is broken, and pretty good. All right, so now let's go and check if it actually works. So I'm going to create a, let's say, a luxurious brand new car. Yep. So let's make it a Toyota Camry. I don't have Camry, so let's make it a Prius 2020, and let's create a registration number, and let's make it automatic. The price per day will be $150, and for phone number, let's do like this. Add a few images, and let's do create listing. Oh yeah, so it says page expired, and if we go, did we add the CSRF in this? Yeah, no we didn't, so let's do CSRF to make sure that that doesn't happen. And yeah, let's fill this again. Luxurious Toyota Corolla, and registration number will be, and automatic 150, and let's select the images, open, and create the listing. Base table review, okay, so because we haven't migrated the database yet, so let's just do migrate, created that. And if you do Control R, resubmit the form, it says that the index method does not exist, but it should have created the listing. So if we go and do select star from listings, run, yes, we have this, and it should be a Toyota, and model should be Corolla 2021, all of that. All right. So here we are doing that, and let's make sure that we have the images as well. So let's select static from images, and let's do create listing. So if we go, Yep, we do. And if we go into our storage and app, so if public images, images, so yep, here they are. Right, so I think these are being created during tests. Let me just make sure. So if we run the test, yeah, so these are definitely being created during tests. All right, so let's close this, and now I want to apply some validation to that. So let's make sure that you know, if we submit something, you know, if we submit without some fields, you know, like if we submit the form like this, so it's going to, you know, try and insert it and give us an SQL error. We want to cache these errors before. So let's do now public function test, and say like title is required to create a listing. All right, so here now I'm going to take this, take this whole thing, right, and paste it here. And what actually I'm going to do is I'm going to make this, move this into a method called this data, and I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to say protected function data should return an array, and that array is this. Okay, so let's see, yeah. And now we can reuse this, so we can just do this data, and we got the user, and when we try to do that, let's get rid of this because we have already covered this up. So right now we want assert session has errors, and we want to make sure that it has the errors for the title. Okay, so and we're going to unset the title here so that, you know, the title is not part of the request. Okay, so let's do TTF. Oh, so we're still getting that, so this should pass. So in order to do that, we're going to actually create a request, create listing request, and let's go in there, create listing request. For authorized, we'll just make it true because we're making sure that a not logged in user cannot do that. Then we're going to say required, and then actually let's close all these additional files and open up the create listing request. All right, so here instead of doing request, we'll say create listing request, and let's say make sure that it's imported, and now let's run it again. All right, so now it passes. Now we're going to do the same thing for all of the fields. Okay, so let's say after title we have the maker ID, maker underscore ID is required. I'm going to unset that, maker ID, and let's run this. It will fail, and then we will maker ID is required, and we'll say it exists in the maker's ID. Right, so it should exist in the database. So let's try this. So if we actually, let's not do that. We want to, I'm going to create a separate test for this. All right, so if we now run this, let's pass that. Yep, it passes. And now let's create another one. So I'll say public function, actually not manually because it's going to take too long. So I'm going to say test maker ID is required to create a listing. So I'll say make test an existing maker ID is required to create a listing, right? So or rather just make it what this test is actually going to do, which will be test a non-existent maker ID is rejected when creating listing, right? So what we will do here is, instead of making it like that, we'll say data maker ID, and we'll just set it to some arbitrary number, which we know we don't have. And let's run this. It fails again because it is there. So here now we will do exists in the makers and ID. Okay, let's run, and there we are. Okay, now let's do the same thing for the model. We're going to copy these two tests, and okay, so model ID, let's run that. All right, so model ID. Okay, so let's run first this one, and let's get this to pass. Model ID required. And once this passes, we're going to run the second test. And in order to get this to pass, actually let's make sure this is failing for that. Yes. So we will put exists models ID. And now let's run. No. Oh, actually it's car models. Yeah, I'm always going to trip up on that. Okay. So now we have this. Let's add the next one for the year. So let's say test year is required to create a listing, and once it fails, we'll do year, and let's make it required. Run. Works. Okay, so the next one is going to be for the registration number, and yeah, we'll just do registration number, and let's add that. Okay, so I'm going to add these tests for the transmission, and for the price per day, and the phone number. All right, and yeah, I guess yeah, so we also need one for the images. Say test at least one image is required to create a listing, and we'll do images. And now let's run this whole create listing feature test. Okay, so let's start from the top. where it starts failing. Yeah, so session is missing expected key errors. So yeah, we need to make the transmission required. Transmission is required. Then the price per day, that's required. The phone number, that's required. And the images is required. And if you run it again, yep, all the tests pass and we are good to go. So we have this whole form. The rendering of the form is somewhat covered, and this. So now if we run like this test docs, so this gives us like a very nice report to to see like what like you can think of it as a documentation. So let's see that a non-logged in user should not be able to access the listing form. So this test passes, and all of these. So what is required? Title is required. Maker ID is required. So now let's say like somebody comes and they like remove this rule, and when you run the tests, yeah, it's going to fail. Oh, so we have 40 tests and there's one test that's failing. You go see which test is failing. Oh, so maker ID is required. So that means that maker ID is not being required. That's why this test is failing. Okay, you go and see your validation. Oh, right, somebody removed the required rule. You add it back and you run the test. So this is, so the odds of breaking something when you ship something new, when you're doing TDD, are reduced by a great extent. So yeah, now we're going to create the index page. So I'm going to create the test for that. Make test index listing feature test, and it's going to be index listing feature test. Okay, so let's get rid of this, and let's do protected function setup parent setup, and it's supposed to be void. And let's do this seed, and let's bring the use refresh database, and here we're going to first do the same test. A not logged in user should not be able to view the user's listings page, and let's do response equals this get route listings.index, and with the response assert redirect login. All right, let's run it. Yeah, and it passes because we already put it in the middleware, but it's nice to just make sure that to get it to fail. Yep, now it's trying to get to that index, and if you put it here, it should just pass. All right, so let's close these two because we don't need that anymore, and let's close this routes file as well. Okay, so I'm going to do public function test. A logged in user can view the user's listing page, and here we'll do user, and we create a factory, create a user, and we'll do this acting as user. Let's import the user class. All right, and we'll do response equals this get route listings dot index, and we'll do response assert OK, and yeah, so it doesn't exist. Let's go and create it. So let's do public function index, and let's see what else. So that passes. Now you want to add some more tests. So I'll add another one, public function test a logged in user, or rather let's add the assertions here. So I'm going to create, so let's create some listings for this user. So say listing factory create, and we want to create these listings for this user, right? And here let's import that, and here we should see response assert C. So in order, if you want to create like more than one record, so you could just pass a number here. Let's say if you wanted to create 5, you could do that. Let's create 3, and let's say that we want to see those listings title. So if you like make sure that all of the listings for that user are titled, their titles are visible there. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so there is no listing factory, so let's create that. PHP artisan make factory listing factory, and let's check it out. All right, so here we're going to do title faker sentence, and yeah, let's make it 3 words so it doesn't get too long, and user ID will be a user factory, the maker ID will be a maker factory, and the model ID will be a car model factory, and let's do the year. It will be like this, faker year, and registration number, this faker word, and for the transmission we can just do this faker random element, and it will be automatic or manual, price per day, we could this faker say number between 100 to 950, and then the phone number we can just use the faker phone number. All right, so let's import all the classes, so user, maker, model, and we're good. Now I want to, like, when this is they created, we can use a factory callback inside of the configure. So we define it like this, and inside we can do this after creating. like when this the object is created, it's going to be passed into this callback. And here, what I want to do is I want to generate some images for that. So let's import this. So I'm going to say listing images, create. I'm going to create 2 images. So we're going to use the create many method, and the path I'll use the placehold.it, and let's say 500 x 500, and the other one, let's do path http placehold.it, and let's say 400 x 300. Yes, so I guess we're good here. Now if you go back and run this, call to undefined method listing factory. All right, let's go into our listing model and add the use as factory trait. Right, again, okay, collection create many does not exist. Let's see, yeah, so since we're calling it on top of that relationship, we're not going to use the collection. All right, so now we're getting some useful error, fail asserting that this empty contains that. So let's go into our listings controller and create the view listings index, and we will just take the request and get the current user. Let's say list. Actually, let's do this here, and I'll do listings. So request listings, request user listings, and let's import this class. Illuminate HTTP request, and then let's go ahead and create that view, or rather run the test and let it tell us that you need to create that view. So I'm going to go and say index.blade.php, and here I'm going to reuse some of this. Okay, and well, let's call it listings, and let's get rid of this whole form. Let's get rid of this script tag, and we are here, and let's do a div, the grid calls 3, and inside we will just have image. No, we'll do for each listings as listing, and for each, and let's create this. So I'm going to add the image first. So let's do listing images. So we're going to show the first image here, and for the alt, let's do listing title, and if we go back and visit that, okay, so we see the image that we uploaded, and then we're going to add an H1 with a large text and some margin from the top, and let's do listing title. Okay, so we get this, and let's do class dark text gray 200. Yeah, so we see the listing title here, and let's make it a bit small. So let's give this box some border. So I'll say dark border gray 700, border rounded and p-4. Okay, so you get this nice border around it, and it is also for the if it's dark, then it's going to be this, otherwise it's going to be a light color, or rather a dark color. And yeah, so for image, let's make this smaller. Okay, so I'm going to add a class here with a width of full H48, object cover, and rounded. Okay, so let's just stop it and run it again. Yeah, so now it looks a bit better. If we run the test, I think we should pass now. Yes, exactly, we passed the test. And this is good, but let's add some more things here. So I'm gonna add the add a paragraph with some margin, and let's say listing maker title, and then listing model title, and then listing year. Okay, so yeah, we don't have the relationships defined, so let's do public function maker belongs to, return this belongs to a maker. Let's do the same for model. Belongs to, return this belongs to model class. Actually, this needs to be car model class. If you run, you get this Toyota Corolla, and let's add the price. Okay, let's add .mt2. So add dollar listing price per day, and let's say per day. And mt2, so listing phone number. Okay, yeah, so it's kind of coming together, I guess. Yeah, but like I'm not gonna spend more time on this, on styling of it. So let's add the link here to create the buttons for the edit and delete. But let me just go over here and add another test, public function test, no listing case should be handled. So let's say like if there are no listings for the user, I'm going to copy this over, and so it's just a user going there, which they should just see a message, no listings found. All right, so let's run this. Oops, fails. And if you go into index now,
we can actually use a for else, and this will be the else and for else. So if there are no listings, then we will just take a div empty4 and we'll just display no listings found. Unexpected else. For else, I think it's supposed to be empty. Okay. Let me just check. Yeah, it is empty. And yep, and if we like run the test, no listings found. And what did we say? Yes, we need to put this here. And we're done. And now I want to actually move this to its own component. So I'm going to go here inside of the components, and I will create a new file and call it listing.blade.php. Put that in, save, and what we'll do is x listing, and we'll do listing equals listing. All right. So, yep, works. And actually, let's now add the edit and the delete buttons. So let's close these extra files, and yep. So here, this added div, and I'm going to take a secondary button, and I'm going to create a new component. I'm going to say secondary link .blade.php, and let's make it an anchor, and I guess that's it. This should work. And let's close this. So I'm going to do x secondary link href equals route listings.edit, and let's pass the listing through. And inside we have the edit. Okay, listings.edit is not defined. Actually, let's cut this for now, and let's test drive this. So here, say we should see assert see the edit, and also see the delete. Okay, so we should see these buttons. And now let's run this. Whoops, no edit. So we're going to go into our listing, add that back, run it, and we should see listings.edit is not defined. Let's go define that. So let's say web.php, and we'll do route get listings slash listing edit, and listings controller class edit name listings dot edit. All right, so let's run this. So now we need a delete and for that we can actually do a form because it needs to be a delete request. So I'm gonna, the action is going to be route listings dot destroy, and let's do listing ID, and the method is going to be post. Let's do method, it's going to be delete csrf and let's add the x secondary button, and inside we'll say delete. And run it. Listings.destroy is not defined. Let's go and do that. Route delete listings slash listing listings controller class destroy name listings destroy. All right, let's run the test and it passes. All right, so now let's create the edit listing feature test. So let's create the test, make test, edit listing feature test. All right, so here we are, and let's get rid of this. Let's do use refresh database, protected function set up, parent set up, and this seed. All right, so let's do our default test that a not logged in user cannot access the edit listing page. Oh no. Okay. So here, let's say response equals this, get route listings dot edit, and say response assert redirect to login. And let's run. Passes. And now actually I'm gonna go to the create listing feature test. I'm going to copy all of these tests here, and then I'm going to edit the ones out. Okay, so let's go one by one and see what we can do. Let's import the class. All right, so a non-logged in user should not be able to access the create listing. So let's make it the edit listing form. So it's going to be listings.edit. Let's make it a this, and this should work. Yep. And then this is going to be, let's import the class, add model users. Actually, let's import all classes and see what we get. Facade for storage, we want the facade class. Okay. So let's take this. A logged in user should be able to see the necessary fields to create the listing. No, not create the listing. To edit a listing, or let's say edit their listing. Okay, so yeah, we need to make a lot of changes here. So here we'll do listings.edit, and we'll pass the listing ID for which we need the listing to exist. So it's a listing equals listing factory create, and then the user ID will be the user ID, and this will be the listing that we pass. And you should see edit listing. All of this should be there, and all of these should be there. And this, however, should be listings.update, and the method should be post. Yeah, this should be okay. Listings.update, and we need to pass in the listing here as well. Then you should have make version not available. Yeah, I think now we see this. So listings controller edit doesn't exist. Let's go and create that. Listings controller public function edit, and saying that edit listing does not. So let's do return view listings.edit, and okay, so let's do edit.blade.php, edit.blade.php, and let's copy the create one and paste that in. And here we'll do edit listing, and let's run the test and see where we land. Enable undefined variable makers. Yep. So let's close out of all these unnecessary things. And let's go back to here. Let's bring the controller over here, and we're going to pass this exact same thing down to the edit. And let's see. Let's run. Okay, listings.update is not defined. Whoops. I thought I was done with creating all the routes, but I think this one is left. Route put listings slash listing, and we'll do listings controller class update, and the name will be listings.update. Okay. Test. Method post multi-part form data. So, yeah, I think yeah. So it's supposed to be update, and we need to say method. Yeah. So let's do this. I'm missing parameter listing. Okay. So we need to pass the listing through, and in order to do that we need to accept it here. And we'll do listing, and let's import that in, and let's run the test. Okay, so we also need to make sure that the method is present there. Okay, so we say so see HTML, all of this is present, and we need to see response assert see HTML. It's supposed to be name equals method, value equals put. And yeah, let's run this. Yeah, so now we can go here and put that in. So say method put, so it should All right. So now I'm going to go here and do some refactoring because there's a lot of repetition here between the create and edit. So I'm going to copy this whole thing. I'm going to cut it and take it into create a new folder called partials. And inside, I'm going to create a file called form.blade.php, paste that there, and let's include that. So I'll say include listings dot partials dot form, and I'm going to change the label of the button here, and I guess we're good. And we can do the same thing for the create.blade.php because we haven't made any change here. So let's put the form right there. All right, so if we run, yeah, we should be able to get a green. And now we can just run the create listing feature test to make sure that nothing is broken with this change. So this is the kind of security that, that the TDD gives you when you're refactoring, because now we moved some things around, and yeah, we just run the test to make sure that nothing broke. All right, so now that that test is passing, let's close this, and this, and keep on going. So I test a not logged in user must not be able to save a listing. Yeah. So before we go over there, I'm going to create a test to make sure that the existing values are populated inside of the form. So let's say test, the existing listing values are populated inside the edit form, and let's copy some of this stuff. So we're going to go here. Actually, let's copy this. Down here, we're going to say response assert C HTML, and we'll have a value equals, and say listing title. Okay, just keep on adding. We have the value maker underscore ID, and since this is going to be inside of an option, you want to make sure that that option is selected. And yeah, for model, I'm going to, because we bought some Alpine logic, so we're going to, so we're going to make some assertion about that later, but let's figure out the rest of the ones. So we have a value for the year and transmission. Then we have a registration number. And transmission is also that. And year is also a drop-down, a select. So after registration number, we'll do a price per day. And then we have the phone number. All right, so let's go. Okay, so this is about line 33. What? No, 95. And yeah, so let's go into our form and say the value is listing title, and if the title is not present, since we are also using this form in the create, so we need to keep in mind. So then we will do an empty string. And now let's run the test again. So we're at 96. So if it's about maker, I'm sure of it. So we will bring this down here, and let's say if maker ID equals listing maker ID, then selected, and if. All right, so let's run this. So it's still at 96, but if you see, we're checking for one space, and here we have a space after this, and then a space here. So let's add 2 spaces in all of these. And yeah, we're at 97. So we'll do listing maker ID. What if listing is not there? I want to add is set. Okay, so let's say 0. If it's not there, then let's default to 0. And let's forget the model for now. And here we'll do if. Now let's bring these down. So let's say if I equals listing year or 0, let's make it a, yeah, let's do this. Then we want to say selected, otherwise, and if. And let's run this. Now we are at 97. One space over here. It should work. Let's see. We have 2 spaces here. Yeah, so now we're breaking at manual. So we could actually, yeah, let's copy this and go to our transmission, and let's do if listing transmission, okay, equals automatic. It's selected, and otherwise let's compare it to manual. And let's do this over here as well. Okay, now for 99, I think it's for the registration number, but let's just make sure on 99, yes, we're checking the registration number. So we'll do value equals listing registration number, and like this. And let's keep going, and let's do a price per day. then the phone number. All right, so let's run. So it keeps it's 99, which is for the registration number, and I think I've already done that. So what the, oh, I added it in the wrong place. Okay, so let's add it here. All right, now it's 99. Yep. 100 price per day. Did I add all of these to the wrong one? Yes, we did. Okay. Yep. And let's go. Back to 97. Yep, so it's having a problem with this. Let's see. This is the year drop down. So I guess when we generate the year, so this is a problem with the listing factory. So for the year, what we want to do is make it a number. Yep, so let's say this figure number between, so I think we support from 1981 to 2024. So this should be fixed right now. All right, so we have done that so that the values will be pre-populated. So if we click edit now, you can see that they are here, and now I want to make sure before we move on that public function test a user must not be able to access edit form of another user's listing. All right, so in order to simulate that, I'm going to create a listing. So listing factory. When we do this, it'll have a user will be created for it, and then we're going to create another user, and we'll be logged in as that user, acting as user, and then we will try to response this get route listings.edit, and I'll say listing ID, or we could just say listing, and we'll say response assert status response http underscore forbidden, and let's import the illuminate http response, and let's go. So we're expecting 403, but right now, if there is, if a user puts the ID of the listing of another users, they'll be able to access the edit form for it. And we don't want to allow that. So I'm going to actually create a policy, PHP artisan make policy listing policy. And I'm going to go in there, listing policy. And here I'm going to say public function edit. And it's going to take the user and the listing, and it's going to return a boolean. So I'm going to say if user return user ID is equals to listing user ID, and let's do this. And here inside of the controller, we just say gate facade authorize, and we'll say edit, and then let's pass the listing, and then let's run the test. Yep, now it passes. Perfect. So now let's continue going on. So a test a not logged in user must not be able to edit the listing. So it's a list.update 5, and let's run the test. Oops. TTF. Received 405. So it's supposed to be a put. No test. Oh, yep. So it's supposed to be a put. And now let's run the test. Okay, so it passes. So it tests a logged in user can successfully edit their own listing. Yep. And here we have this. So we create the user. Let's create the listing afterward. So listing factory create, and we'll put the user ID, and this will be a, let's update all the next ones because they are going to be for the update, and the method is going to be put. So I'm using multiple cursors now, so all of the subsequent ones should be updated as well. And yeah, so I also need to put the listing here as well. So we don't need to fetch the listing because we already have the listing. All we have to do is do listing refresh, and so check these. And I'm going to actually yeah, so let's keep these for now. Maybe no, actually I'm going to comment these out because I want to create a test with separate a title so that we can make assertions about the images, because if the user does not upload an image here, I don't want the existing images to be removed. But if they do upload images, I want to those images to replace the existing images. So that's the behavior that I want. And let's run this and see where we are. So it doesn't have the update method. All right, let's add that. So let's say public function update. Now we're going to get a request and a listing. And let's see what else. Test a logged in user can successfully edit their own listing. Expected status code. Okay, so expects to be redirected. Redirect route listings.index. Okay, let's run it again. Okay, so we'll do listing update request input, and we'll also do the same thing, accept images, and we're good. Everything is updated and we are redirected. And did I add that knowledge must not be able to edit a listing? Yeah, I'm going to add a similar test here for the update route. A logger must not be able to submit an update request for another user's listing. Right, so the listing factory create, listing update, and this should also be not allowed. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to go back and fix that. So do listing put. Receive 302. And here, what we're going to do is yeah, let's do it here like we did before. So let's say edit and listing. So it should just get it to pass for now, but we will have to update it a little bit later. I'm going to move this to the authorization in the form request. So yeah, and let's add another test for the images that I mentioned. So I'm going to add the test, public function test, existing images are kept if no new images are uploaded, and I'm going to take this and I'm just gonna unset the data images and down here I will do this assert equals listing images count, and it should be the same as before, which I could do a before images count. So listing images count before images count. Actually, let's reverse these because the first value is the expected one and the second is the value that we want to check. Okay, so let's TTF this. Yep, worked. And then a logged in user can successfully edit their own booking, and this one was, yeah, test existing images are kept. Okay, and let's create a new one, public function test, new images uploaded should replace the existing images. Right, so this time we're going to copy the same thing. We're not going to unset the images, and also don't need this before images count. And I'm going to bring all of this down here, right? So we want these images to be available there and here. You know, the images should be, you know, as many as there were. So let's try and run this, and I think this will fail. Unable to find a file. Okay, so if you look at, yeah, because we're not doing anything yet with those images. So let's do something. Yep, and if we save those, since we're doing a store and then we're creating a new one, yeah, so this is just going to add, and the count is going to be different because there were 2 already and 2 more were added. So I guess if we do listing images delete, actually like this, delete, and then we do, then I think this test will pass, but the previous one, that the ones that are existing, this will fail. Yes, because it deletes. So I think we need to add a check. So like if the request has images, then we do this, otherwise. So I think this will pass now, and then the previous one, both of them are going to pass now. And let's quickly fix the validation for this. So test title is required to update a listing, and we yeah, let's bring a listing here. Okay, so all the validations. Okay, so for the image, let's say let's define the opposite, because the image is no longer required. Image is not required to edit a listing, right? So we'll do unset data images, and we don't need the storage because we're not going to be interacting with it. So we create that, create the listing, and say assert a session has no errors, and let's get rid of this. So where were we? Model ID, maker ID. So test maker ID is required to create a listing. Yep, so I'm going to just make this update a listing. All right, so, and here I'm just going to bring in the edit listing request. So we need to create that. PHP artisan make request, edit listing request, import it, and create listing request. I'm going to take all of these rules and bring them into the edit listing request. And we don't need these images, but the rest are a-okay. And yeah, so like I said before, I want to move this authorize to our edit listing request. So I'm going to say return this authorize, and let's say edit, and this route listing. Okay, so if this can do that. Okay, so let's run the edit listing feature test and see what we get. Whoops. Why did this happen? I think yeah, so this was incorrect. So we need to do this user can, and then say edit, and then let's do this route listing. And I'm pretty sure this is it because I think we are it was getting into a recursion call because all of the tests are passing now. And if you run the whole suite, yeah, only one test is failing. Undefined variable listing inside of the form.play.php. Yep, so we are failing the create listing feature test. Let's see, create listing feature test, line 56. Okay, so here's the problem. So we go into form.play.php and undefined variable listing. So let's see if this gives us a line number to look at. Yes, I think it's 106. So let's observe all the currencies of listing. Go up. Okay, we are using transmission, price per day, phone number, title. Okay. So if we do it like this, listing title, or maybe listing this. Now let's move to line 30. Yeah, so yeah, I think we need to do this, which is cleaner anyway because we don't have to give a default value. So And so, okay, let's do this. All right, so let's run the whole suite again. What? Form.blade.php. What's the line number? Line 30. Okay, let me just this without exception handling, and let's run this again to see if we get a better error message. Yep. Okay, so undefined variable listing form.blade.php, and where is that? Hmm. So I guess we could okay, let me just go inside the create.blade.php, and here let's pass a listing as null, and let's run the test again. Yeah, so we need to pass this, and now all of the tests are passing. Okay, so we are done with the edit, so let's just refresh and see if this actually works. So I'm going to change this to from Toyota to Honda City, edit the listing, and now it becomes a Honda City. All right, so now let's do the final test. So I'm going to say PHP artisan make test, delete listing feature test, and delete listing feature test. So this is going to be a simple one. So the first one is going to be, actually let's bring in the refresh database test, a not logged in user cannot delete a listing, period. Yes, so it's a response, this delete route listings dot destroy, and let's do response assert redirect slash login, and I think this will pass with flying colors because we've already defined the route inside of the auth middleware. Let's get the second one, public function a logged in user test, a logged in user can delete their own listing. All right, so let's do listing equals listing factory create, and so do this acting as, so it's a listing user, because it will also create a user. Let's say response equals this delete route listings dot destroy, and we'll pass the listing. And then let's say response assert redirect, and let's say route listings dot index, and then we'll do listing equals listing find listing ID, and then we'll say this assert null listing. Okay. Yep. So let's go into listing and define the belongs to for user. So let's say belongs to, return this belongs to user class. Let's run it again. We need to define the destroy method. Okay, public function destroy. So we'll have a listing. So we'll just do listing delete. No, actually not. Let's just, okay, so return redirect route listings index. And it says that it exists, asserting that listing object is null, because it's not. So what we need to do is we need to just do listing delete. Now let's run and delete from where ID. Okay, so in order to delete, we need to first delete the images because it has a foreign constraint, and then we'll do listing delete. Okay, and we are done with this test. Now we want to make sure, one last thing, that public function test a user must not be able to delete another user's listing. Okay, so let's bring this over here. So we create this, and then we create a new user that we are logged in as, factory create, and import this. And we are going to act as this user, and when we try to delete it, we should say assert status HTTP. Okay, this will be response HTTP forbidden. The listing should still exist. Assert not null. Okay, and let's run this. Received 302, so it successfully deleted it. Yep. So what we want to do is we want to go into our listing policy, and for delete, public function delete user listing bool. Let's say user ID equals listing user ID, and inside of our controller we will say gate authorize delete, and let's say listing. And now if we run, it passes, let's run the whole suite one last time. Okay, so we created, not 66 tests because there were some tests before that, but we wrote quite a bit of tests, and yeah, so this CRUD basically is now built with TDD, and I hope that this will give you like a slight idea of I know it takes longer to do the things the TDD way, but it's very worth it in the longer run when you have to like make some changes. So it gives you a peace of mind that whenever you make a change that is going to break something in another place, you will know. So yeah, I guess this is it for this tutorial. And if you liked it, if you found it useful, please like, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any comments or feedback, please share that as well. And I will see you in the next one.